Well, the White House announced a trade deal with the United Kingdom. It's a tariff deal that is aimed at eliminating barriers to trade between America and Britain. It's aimed at ethanol, beef, agriculture, and pharmaceuticals, among other things.
Free speech is under attack, but Rumble refuses to back down on this. We've always believed in empowering voices, no matter how unpopular. And now we're taking that fight to the next level when major advertisers conspired to pull their dollars. Even brands like Dunkin' Donuts turned their backs on shows like ours, claiming Rumble had a right-wing culture. But we're not here to fit a mold. We are here to defend free expression. Right now, for a limited time, you get $10 off an annual plan using the promo code Redacted. Just visit rumble.com/premium/redacted and claim your discount code today. Just use that code Redacted.
E.J. Antoni is a research fellow at the Richard Astor Fellow in the Heritage Foundation's Grover M. Herman Center for the federal budget. He joins us to discuss. Thank you so much for joining us. What is your reaction to this, and what do we need to know as consumers?
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I would say that the first thing that we need to know is that as consumers, this won't affect us very much. Now, that's not a bad thing, because most of these trade deals most of these trade negotiations, I should say, were never about trying to negotiate a better deal for consumers. These were about trying to get better deals for producers. In other words, American consumers can already get products from all around the world and at very affordable prices. That's been a very good benefit to us in terms of globalism. So what has the negative effect been? Well, it has been the fact that our exporters have not been given the same courtesy that foreign exporters have received. In other words, foreign exporters have had access to American consumer markets. That's benefited them, and it's benefited the American consumer, because trade benefits people. Otherwise, we wouldn't trade. But our exporters have not been given the same courtesy. They have not had access to foreign markets. That's been the problem for 80 years now. And as a consequence, Trump essentially decided to finally fight back in these trade wars. All right. So with that in mind, what does this deal actually give American producers, whether that's a dairy farmer or a factory worker? It gives them more access to the United Kingdom's consumer market. That means we can sell more products there, whether that's ethanol, which is a combination of both a farm product and an industrial product, or maybe it's actual foodstuffs. In the case of things like beef, for example, but also automotive parts, steel, aluminum, the list goes on and on. This is a very good deal for American producers, because at the same time, it does not diminish our access to products out of the UK. It gives American producers more access in terms of that United Kingdom consumer market. So it's definitely a win for America.
That's great to know. Sorry.
No, go ahead. You go ahead.
So I wanted to ask you, when I sort of said that at the beginning, or just right before we brought you on, can we take this model that the Trump administration has worked out with the UK and transplant it to Japan, China, India, other countries right now? Are we going to see a replication of this, or like a cut and paste, or are we going to see totally different for every country right now? What do you think?
I think that's right, Clayton. I think we're going to see essentially very similar deals with other countries. What this basically does in terms of the United Kingdom is it reduces both their tariff but also their non-tariff barriers on American exports. And very frequently, it is the non-tariff barriers that are much worse than the tariffs themselves. For example, Canada has a lot of non-tariff barriers that essentially make it impossible for our exporters to get stuff into Canadian markets. Now, if you look at it in terms of dollars, you won't actually see, for example, a lot of American dairy farmers paying that 300% tax, because they never bother getting anywhere near the quota cap before that tax kicks in. So that's a kind of non-tariff barrier. It prevents them from actually getting access to Canadian consumers, not because they're paying a tariff, but because of that quota system. Believe it or not, it's actually easier for a lot of our exporters to get their stuff into Russian markets than it is to get it into Canadian markets. That just demonstrates how bad these non-tariff barriers can be on a country like Canada. The UK had some pretty steep ones as well. So again, we're very glad to see those go away. However, I will say, I think part of the reason why the UK was the first domino to fall as opposed to India is because of the conflict in India and Pakistan. I would not be surprised if we eventually find out that the India deal was actually more or less done first, and then the UK one ended up being a kind of carbon copy of it. But whatever the case, to your point, I think this is essentially the blueprint for what we're trying to accomplish with nations around the world, where we want, again, it's more access for our exporters to these different consumer markets. We want to be able to sell more of our stuff abroad. We want American producers, therefore American workers, to be on an equal footing with producers around the world.
Now, you see these memes online of people abroad saying, we don't buy anything from America. We don't care. They don't realize that we have the best steaks, that we have energy to export, and they don't know what we have, right? Because they haven't been given a chance.
Right, exactly. There's a reason why Europeans buy virtually no American cars. It's because it's so difficult to actually get American cars into the EU's consumer market. You essentially have to pay so much, whether it's the tariffs themselves or other kinds of fines and fees. It is so prohibitively expensive that it's just not worth it to sell cars there. And even if those cars are available for sale, they're at such high prices that people choose domestically produced alternatives. In other words, they choose cars that are made in Europe instead of buying ones that are made in America and shipped to Europe. I mean, we have, whether it's tariff or non-tariff barriers, we have trade barriers in place today that were put in place after World War II. So here we are, essentially 80 years later. I'm sorry, we no longer need to protect the industries of Europe from American competition. We're no longer trying to rebuild that continent and rebuild their industrial base. Times have changed, and that just doesn't need to happen anymore. It is far past time for those folks to be able to essentially compete with the rest of the world, and that includes competing with American industry.
Right.
E.J. Antoni, great analysis. Fascinating to see it. It's going to be really interesting. And a really interesting point about India first. Maybe this got shuffled to the back there. We're going to see if this is unique or if this is kind of a carbon copy we're going to see in other countries right now. Markets, though, surging on this news. So I think maybe something's going well here. Joining us from my home city of Philadelphia, go Birds. Go
Amen.
Thanks, EJ. Great to see you.
You too.